Y'all, it's been like 3 months since I told you that I was going to let you know all the things that we are using in our homeschool. I recorded that video the next day after saying that to you guys, right? Only to realize that my microphone had been off the entire time. It freaks me out so much. Actually, I'm gonna check to make sure that this is definitely snug as a bug in there. I was so sad when I went to edit that video and it just sounded absolutely terrible. You couldn't really make out everything that I was saying. There was like some weird echo because I was doing it in our dining room. So anyways, I've been wanting to record this for a long time and am just now actually able to get around to doing it. I hope that you all had a wonderful holiday season. We certainly did, and I'm excited to get into this. So one of the good things about recording this before is that I see one of the pitfalls of it. This video could go on forever, for a very long time. So I'm gonna actually split it into two. So today we're going to talk about what we've been doing for our family subjects, and then in the next one we'll talk about for their individual subjects. Because since we've already used this we're on what, week 23 right now of our homeschool. So next week is officially our last week of term 2. We'll be 2/3 of the way through the year. So since we've already used it for so long, I already have a lot of opinions and things that we've tweaked and done. You know, I just want to be able to share that with you guys in case you're wanting to look into these resources for your own homeschool. Then you can kind of have some extra things in the back of your mind as you're looking at all of it. So there were actually a lot of things that we were using at the beginning of the school year that we're not using anymore now. Those will end up being kind of an honorable mention at the end. So for right now, I'm just going to focus on all of the things that have worked, or maybe the curriculum itself worked, but I had to tweak it in some way, and we'll kind of talk about each of those things as we go along. So the first thing I've already talked to you about some in the last video. For our Bible, we are doing BSF. So if you haven't heard of it, BSF stands for Bible Study Fellowship. It is an international Bible study. This year we are focusing on the book of Revelation. Here I have Elijah's Discovery Guide. So this one happens to be the middle school one, but all of us are studying the book of Revelation at our own level. So I have my own personal Bible study that has notes and questions and a place for me to record like different things that I learned from the lecture that we have while we're there. But then my kids also have their own discovery guides. So our oldest two use the middle school discovery guide. Arwen, who's in 3rd grade, uses the upper elementary one, and Aspen, who's in 1st grade, uses the lower elementary. So every week they're reading the same portion in Revelation that I'm reading. So we go through it all together. I help them answer any questions that they might find tough. My questions are of course on a more adult level, and then theirs are all on their level. So anyways, we have really enjoyed this study. This is the first time that they've done the book of Revelation, and I think that they've done a really great job at it. You know, they acknowledge obviously there are very different viewpoints on the book of Revelation. It's something that there could easily be kind of like a lot of contention over, but it hasn't been that way at all. It's just been really good. I love the people in my group and getting their insight on things. The kids have really enjoyed it. They've made good friends there, and the Bible study itself is excellent. I love the different discussions that have been brought up through it. There have been several like light bulb moments, especially with our youngest, Aspen. He is 6, and so, you know, he's always read through the Bible and stuff with us, but I think that this is the first year where it's actually like kind of sinking in a lot more. And some of the discussions that I've been able to have with him especially have just been really beautiful, and so I really appreciate it. If you've never looked into Bible Study Fellowship, definitely take a look and see if they have any groups in your area. I always highly recommend it. So that's one of the things that actually changed for us throughout the year. So when we started off at the beginning of the school year, I was doing everything that was inside of this guide from Simply Charlotte Mason. So this is their early modern and epistles. So for our Bible stuff, we were focusing on all of the epistles that they had in here. So like we went through Ephesians and Philippians. I don't remember exactly what all we got through. I think we got through Colossians too. Yeah, so here I have it. So we did Ephesians, Philippians, and Colossians before just kind of paring back and focusing on BSF. Since we were doing New Testament here, I kind of usually like to have like some New Testament and some Old at the same time. So at the beginning of the year, we also were studying in the Old Testament as well, like separately from what was in here. And so we just had a lot of Bible stuff going on, which normally in the past that's been perfectly fine and we've been able to do it. If you saw my last video, you'll know that like this year was just a bit different and we really needed to be able to pare back. And so this is one of those things that just had to get pared back. So we are not doing the epistles from here. We're not doing our Old Testament study. We are just focusing on the book of Revelation and BSF. And you know what? That is definitely enough. It has still been very blessed and I don't feel the need to add on anything else. So with that being said, this guide is not just for Bible, it is also for history and geography. For geography, we have been using their Visits to North America. It is the geography course that goes along with the early modern and epistles. So with the early modern, you're really focusing more on like the colonial time period and the American Revolution. I chose that one simply because it just felt like the best place to kind of group everybody into one at the same time. We had previously done Ambleside, and so everybody was split up. Our youngest hadn't really done any formal history yet. He had listened in on some of their stuff, but he hadn't done any actual formal history himself. Arwen had done the ancients, and then more recently she had done the Middle Ages. Alexia had went through the Middle Ages and then like the Renaissance and Reformation, and Elijah had done the Renaissance and Reformation and then into the colonial and revolutionary time period last year. So since he had already done the colonial and revolutionary stuff, this year is kind of like a refresher for him. There would have been some overlap with some of the book choices, but honestly, a lot of those were cut. I just chose to kind of do away with them. So it's nice for him that he already knows about some of these people that we're talking about because he read very in depth about them last year. But then for Alexia, my 5th grader, that meant that she wasn't going to have a gap. So she went straight from the Renaissance and Reformation right into the colonial era and the revolutionary time period, which was perfect. Arwen has a bit of a time gap there. I will say that in our family, I was a Reformed Christian for several years, and so in our family anyways, we had talked a lot about the Reformation already, and so it doesn't feel like she's missing out on a whole lot there. Maybe more on kind of the Renaissance side she would be, but she'll at least have time to loop back through the history cycle again so that she's able to learn about that time period a little better. And for Aspen, it felt natural to go ahead and start with our country's history. So yeah, I just felt like choosing the early modern time period made the most sense for our family with minimal gaps happening, or if there was going to be a gap, then at least we could loop back. So anyways, all of that to say, with this particular history curriculum, then you're supposed to use this geography curriculum, the Visits to North America, which of course focuses on Canada and the United States and Mexico and the surrounding areas there. If you've never seen this book before, it focuses kind of a lot on map work. Like here, for example, when we were working on Canada, so it would give us the provinces over here that it wanted us to work on, and some of them were ones that they had already learned before this particular lesson. This was visit 6, I think, visit 5. So they had already learned some of them. So they were supposed to bend it back and fill out any of the ones that they remembered, and then open it up and see what new ones were also added and add those to the map. So there's a lot of like map work like that throughout. It also does it with the 50 states. We also have a different type of map work. So they would use tracing paper to go over anything that they would want. So for example, recently we did this one. So they used tracing paper to go over this and then made this on the other side on their own from what they had done with the tracing paper. So there's lots of different like map work like that in it, which I like. And then other times we have sections called Meet the Families. And for those, it has you use Hungry Planet. I had an older version of Hungry Planet called What the World Eats. And so we've been using that instead. The page numbers are a little bit different. And so far there's been one family that has not been in this book that is in Hungry Planet. So we just skipped that particular lesson. But other other than that, so far, it's all been in there. So I didn't want to have to, you know, buy a whole nother book when I already had this one, and it's worked out well so far. So if you have this one, you don't necessarily have to buy Hungry Planet if you're okay with skipping maybe a lesson or two throughout the year. Overall, as a geography curriculum, I'm glad that it has the map work and things in there, as well as focusing on the people as well. So if you don't know, inside of What the World Eats or Hungry Planet, here, let me find a good one. Okay, we actually did this family so far. This is Mexico. So it'll show a picture of a family with what they eat in a week, and there will be like a whole grocery list that shows everything that is over here on this side and how much it costs them. And then it'll actually go into their story too. So then you learn about their lives as well. So I really, really like also having the human side of geography in there with the land aspect. I know that a lot of geography stuff just focuses on land more than it does on people. So I'm glad that there is a good mix of that with visits to North America. I will say it is a bit simple, and if your kids haven't ever had any other sort of geography lessons, then there might be things that are kind of missing. So I like, for example, that in Ambleside, we used Charlotte Mason's elementary geography book and also C.C. Long's home geography book, because those gave a good understanding of like kind of positional things, like, you know, what creates day and night, what creates the seasons, how to figure out when you're going north, south, east, or west, that sort of thing. So I really do kind of miss having that style of geography as well. So I will say that if you've never looked into those two books that I just mentioned, I will have them down below in the description box if you want to check those out. I would definitely add something like that along with these. Our kids have already done those for the most part, except for Aspen. He's the only one who hasn't. So I'm considering even like for him going back and seeing, okay, when does Ambleside schedule each of these things so that he can have a little bit of that too, at least some of the lessons out of those books, maybe not necessarily all of them. And also what regions of the globe are hotter, what regions are colder and why, you know, kind of all of that as well. I've talked with him about some of that just because of some of the geography stuff that he did last year with me, where we went through kind of like his kids' atlas and talked about like the different countries and stuff. So like he has kind of like some basic knowledge about that, but I think that it would be good to kind of add in some of those chapters from elementary geography and home geography. The other things that are included in this book, which also, by the way, if you have never looked at this, here is how it's set up. So for example, on this lesson 101 with the Declaration of Independence, it tells you everything that you'll need for the lesson, different things to talk about as a family, and then other things for grades 7 through 9 or grades 10 through 12. Sometimes this is more separated out. You might not have anything as a family, and then you'll have things for grades 1 through 3, grades 4 through 6, and then 7 through 9 and 10 through 12. But for this particular lesson, there is some family stuff for it. Off to the side, I really like this. It includes things to put into your book of centuries or your timeline. So that's really nice. I know a lot of it is also up to, you know, the child and what they're interested in including in their book of centuries because it's like their own. But also it felt like sometimes we were including maybe things that weren't always super important and missing some things that might have been more important. I don't know. So anyway, I just like having this that tells us exactly what we should include in the book of centuries, which that is something I did not bring in here. Okay, so I just had my daughter bring me her book of centuries. So this is another thing that I haven't shown. I thought about doing a video on these earlier in the year and it just did not happen. So we decided on a different style of book of centuries this year. So here I will just show you, for example, in the 1700s. So this is a dual notebook. So one side is blank because on one side of their book of centuries, they get to do their own drawings. So she doesn't have any of the drawings here yet. But then this side is lined. And I kind of split it in half and then have dates running down the side. I put labels at the top to mark like what century it is. And so it just makes it kind of easier for them to find where on the timeline it needs to go and kind of what things would be overlapping with each other, what is all going on at the same time. This format of Book of Centuries has been really good. So this will be the one that they end up keeping for the rest of their school career. So anyways, that's what they're adding to whenever it prompts us to add to the Book of Centuries. So in here, in the actual like spine curriculum, it will give me different things to talk to them about, what we need to add to our Book of Centuries, and what like readings we're gonna do for the day. So on this one, it tells us that we're gonna use America Our Stories, Volume 1, and in there we are reading Chapter 21, The Spirit of 1776. So for that one, I actually just did the digital version. So I have the ebook on my computer that we read on days when we're doing world history. So that was a US History Day. On days when we're doing world history, I have the copy of Our Neighbors, Their Stories, which was a new one that just came out this year through Simply Charlotte Mason. We really have enjoyed both of those history books. So America Our Stories and Our Neighbors, Their Stories. They both definitely give more of like the bird's eye view style of history without it feeling like a textbook. Like it still really draws you in. We've enjoyed so many of the different chapters. We did one recently in world history where we were learning about a man who really perfected the microscope. And so like it even ties in like different scientific discoveries and things like that too. The kids really enjoyed that one. It was super interesting. We really like the way that they're written. I will say it's going to be a little bit different if you're coming from something like Ambleside, where you kind of are reading books that are a little more zoomed in on each specific historical person. So in here, we'll often get like a chapter dedicated to a certain person. In, for example, our island story, we might have 5 or 6 chapters dedicated to the same person, depending on who it is and what their mark was on history, how important that they were to Britain at the time. So it is definitely different, but it is more simple and it's still very rich. I think that if you're not coming from Ambleside, if you have no experience with the types of books that they read, then it'll be an easy transition. It'll be absolutely great. Coming from Ambleside, it's like, oh, this is different. But honestly, it's a different that we needed. So I personally am very happy with it. If you are someone who is also needing to simplify, I can also see you being very happy with it. If you're a person who really loves that super in-depth, super close to each historical figure, then you might prefer something like Ambleside. Just to be, honest and very transparent with you. I'm not here to try to get you to like or want the same things that I like or want. So if you're wanting something more in depth, I would definitely say check Ambleside out if you haven't checked it out. But if you're wanting it to be simple and something that you can all do together as a family without it necessarily being like just super surface, it's still, they're still really good books. We enjoy them. It's still a good education. Then yeah, definitely check out Simply Charlotte Mason. Now, I will say that the curriculum does not just use those 2 books. Like those are the main books that you're reading from, but it also has you get like different picture books or chapter books, depending on what the grade level is, to read throughout the year. So this is where a lot of extra cost can come in for someone who has kids kind of sprinkled throughout the various grades. There were a lot of books that I bought for term 1. Many of them were just very short, little tiny picture books. It does say on their website that you can try to find them at your local library. Our local library had almost none of them. So for history, it wasn't necessarily as bad. I will talk about it a little bit more with science, which was quite overwhelming here in just a little bit. But with the history, it wasn't as bad. They were mainly focused more on chapter books, and there were like a few picture books too. We really enjoyed some of those books. Others did not connect. Just to put it really simply, others just didn't connect. And not because they were necessarily dry, but again, my kids were coming from Ambleside and it felt like some of them were a little bit below their level of what they're used to. And so I ended up honestly just cutting any of the extra books. Like I bought all of them for term 1 to just kind of see what it would be like before purchasing for term 2 and 3. And I'm glad that I did it that way instead of just kind of wasting more money. So yeah, we cut any of the extra books. If you absolutely love Simply Charlotte Mason, then you might be cringing at me right now, but that's just what is working for our family. So we are just focused on those 2 chapter books, the America Our Stories and Our Neighbors Their Stories. Now, I will say for that reason, I haven't decided what we'll do next year for history yet. I know what time period that I want us to be in, since we're all kind of on the same page now and we're doing like the early American history thing. I know that I want us to take the next step, but I'm not sure which curriculum we're going to use for that yet. If we're going to still use Simply Charlotte Mason and just continue to have the kind of pared back, you know, 1 book for US history, 1 book for world history type of approach, or if we're going to do something a little bit different. If anybody has the next step in the Simply Charlotte Mason history rotation, I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments, just to kind of see what your experience is with that, because right now I'm not 100% sure if we want to continue this. Like I said, I do like those books, but at the same time, I'm just wondering if it's sustainable in a way that will make them feel actually close to the people from history. It's almost like Ambleside would be too overwhelming unless we were all grouped together, and grouping us all together in a level somewhere would not work out. And then Simply Charlotte Mason is like just slightly lacking in something in the history. So it's like if there was an in-between, if you know of an in-between somewhere that might work for us, please let me know. I would love to hear about it. Okay, so aside from all of that, I'm looking at my little spreadsheet here on my computer to kind of keep me on track and help me out. Let's go ahead and talk about science next. So of course, we always do nature study. That's something that we enjoy and we focus on as Charlotte Mason homeschoolers, is getting out in nature, you know, going on a hike, looking at the things that are around us. So previously with Ambleside, we followed their rotation and used the Handbook of Nature Study, which is a behemoth. There's kind of like a lot to look through, and I definitely felt kind of like that burden on myself that I needed to pre-read these chapters and kind of have an understanding of the different things that we would find in our area. So for example, if we were in the unit on trees, like I really needed to know at least a little bit about some of the trees around us to kind of help direct them. So there is kind of like the burden of knowing things that falls on to the mother in that instance. So this year, again, is the year of simplification so that we can focus on other priorities. So we used Simply Charlotte Mason again for this to give them a try. So we are doing journaling a year in nature, which is much more simple than the previous approach. The book is divided into the different seasons, and so you'll just flip to whatever season that you're in. It will give the child a prompt. So for example, this one says, notice which plants are still flowering and which have seeds and fruit. Observe how the weather conditions affect the rate of growth. Look closely at the color, size, shape, and appearance of each plant and try to identify a few. Note the similarities and differences between plants that you see. And so like she chose a couple different types of plants and drew their leaves and tried to identify those. There's a place in each season for first. So this is one of the ones that we haven't done yet, but it gives you like little charts here. And you put like what month it first showed up in. So it says record any firsts you observed during the season. You can list them on this page along with their dates or label the calendars on the next page. If you have recorded firsts in a previous year's journal, look back at your observations and compare them with this year. You might look for the first birds that arrive, the first trees or plants that bloom, weather markers such as the first frost, snowfall, freeze, or other seasonal indicators, animals that appear or vanish for hibernating, any other firsts that you find in your area. Yeah, here was, they found like a little praying mantis during the fall outside on one of our little handrails. They were all really excited and decided to draw that. So yeah, it's just really simple. It gives them simple prompts. I will say that the other method was like very structured, and they probably learn a lot more about identification through the other method, whereas this one feels more just like a love of observing and a love of nature and noticing the things in your area, and that's more of what is being cultivated. I think that both of those things are important, especially maybe when they're younger. Like something like journaling a year in nature is better, but maybe as they get older, if you want them to be able to identify more, then look into the Handbook of Nature Study by Anna Botsford Comstock. I'll put that down in the description box too. Everything that I show you or talk about, I will try to put it down in the description box. We'll see how I do. Okay, so then I told you that we would talk about this in a minute. The other thing that we were using for science at the beginning of the year, we're not, just so you know, I'm just going ahead and putting this out there right now. We are not using this anymore. There are lots of different science options available through Simply Charlotte Mason. These are just the ones that I decided to try to do to kind of get like a big picture overview of lots of different areas of science. That did not fit with the year of simplification. Just so we're clear, for the younger two, we were doing discovering what God has made. And then for the older two, we were doing exploring what God has made. So they both kind of follow the same pattern throughout the year of the types of things that they study. You start off with studying creation, and so kind of understanding like the different spheres of science that we'll get into based on the different days of creation, like light, land as in like geology and soil, things like that, plants, you get into animals, you get into the human body, all of that kind of following the different days of creation as you go, which I absolutely love that idea. It's just kind of a lot to try to put it all into one year. So just some different things that you study: light, waters and the atmosphere, weather. Our kids really, really liked the cloud section. All of them are like cloud identifiers now and love to tell what is going to happen or what is happening with the weather based on the clouds. So that was something that did actually really stick with them, and they enjoyed that. Land and plants, so rocks and minerals, soil, seed, plants, mushrooms, trees. Then we get into the sun, moon, and stars, and you talk about the moon, astronauts, our solar system, that sort of thing. Aquatic life and winged creatures. So that was when we had not actually gotten to any of this yet when I pulled it. Then you get into the insects like butterflies, bees, ants, all of that. Land animals, creeping things. So spiders, turtles, snakes, chameleons, crocodiles, frogs, toads, salamanders, bears, beavers, platypuses, caribou, all kinds of stuff. There are different suggested field trips to go along with all of that as well. And then you get into the human body and the different systems of it. So if we had been able to do it, and I'm sure that, I mean, it's a product, so I'm sure that there are lots of families who are able to do this and go through it. We were not that family, not this year anyway, not this year. So I ended up pulling it. We did not continue with this one. There are also lots and lots of books that go with these, because like the history curriculum, this is just like the spine that tells you what you're doing for the day. So the different activities are listed in here, and also the different readings that you need to do in separate books. I was able to find a few of the books at our local library, but most of them I could not find. So we had to buy all of them. I also just bought the term 1 books for this, thankfully. So we just did all of term 1 stuff for these books. And then I was like, you know what? This is just kind of a lot to try to keep up with. Like I said, there were certain things that stuck, mainly the clouds. I don't know what it was about the cloud part, but they really enjoyed the clouds, and they did like weather charts and stuff like that during that time too. So they really liked that one. But beyond that, it just felt like it was going to be very overwhelming, which is on me. That is not on Simply Charlotte Mason. That's a me thing. So what we ended up doing instead, I did not want to have to buy more curriculum. And we had one that we had not used yet. So if you remember, we used to do the Good and the Beautiful for pretty much everything. And this is one of the units that I had bought that we hadn't used yet. It's Water and Our World. And so that is what we have been going through now. And we are just focusing on that. If you know anything about the Good and the Beautiful science units, at least this is how they used to be. They would come like pre-wrapped like in plastic, but it was just the papers, and then you could do what you wanted to with those, whether you wanted to just put them into a binder or whatever. So I put all of them down into these plastic sheet covers and did it that way, which has made it really, really simple. Any of the extra activities that are included, I just put them all into their own little sheet cover, just like packed down in there. And when I cut them apart or anything like that, any of the cards that we've used, then I just put them right back down in there where we had them before. So if I ever wanted to reuse this, maybe for the younger ones as a review later on or something, then I still have it, which makes it really nice. This obviously is not Charlotte Mason whatsoever. However, the kids are doing science. It's very hands-on, this unit at least. Not all of their units are. Like, I know the mammals unit that we did is not like a super hands-on one. There's not really a whole lot of hands-on stuff that you can do with the mammals unit, but this one really is. There's been a good bit of like experiments and different activities and things that we've done so far, and we're only 6 lessons in at this point. The kids have really enjoyed it. It gives lots of good information. We have like our little vocab wall going on in there. There are also a few books that come with it that are like an extra little like reading literature type of pack. We haven't looked at any of those yet. It just says basically that you can read them anytime throughout the unit. So we haven't looked into those yet to see exactly what they're like. I do remember when we did the mammals unit, there was a really nice one called Mammals of Small Pond that we really enjoyed, and that felt very kind of Charlotte Mason-y. It gave sort of like a story for these different animals while you were learning different things about them. So for our science this year, that has been our saving grace. And honestly, if my kids enjoy it and they're learning things with it, I'm okay with sticking with things like that for science. I've also looked into some other different curriculum companies, different science units that we might try out next year. But I definitely have enjoyed doing science family style instead of having it split out amongst all the different kids. It got to the point where it was almost overwhelming last year. This year would have been insane. So just being able to be all together as a family for science has been really cool. So next up, let's talk a little about some literature. First of all, we always have a family read aloud that we're going through. Our first one from this year was The Secret Garden, which I don't know if you've been around for a while on this channel, but we have read The Secret Garden before as a family. It's just been a really long time, and the kids really enjoyed it. And last year in the spring, they were like, oh, I want to read The Secret Garden. There's just something about when it's springtime, like you just want to read it. And we were already having a different family read aloud at that time. So I told them that we could start off our school year with The Secret Garden. So that's what we did. We read that one first. Next up, I don't have it down here with me. It's up in my son's room because it's actually his book. We read the first Wing Feather novel together as a family. So that was the younger kids' first time actually like reading through the whole thing. They really liked the show. Elijah has read the entire series. It's his favorite book series. And so he had fun, you know, seeing the rest of his siblings get to experience it for the first time too. We actually did the audiobook version where Andrew Peterson, the author, is reading it. So that was a lot of fun. I had started out reading it to them. I usually read all of our books to them, but I felt like it would be more fun with more manly voices and things that maybe I wouldn't do such a great job at. And so we really liked listening to the Andrew Peterson recording of that. And then after that, we started in on our next Narnia book. They hadn't read The Magician's Nephew yet. So we read them in publication order and not in like chronological order of like when they happened. And so far they have really enjoyed this one. We're midway through it right now. And then after we're done, we're going to finally do Swiss Family Robinson. I bought this like the very first year that we were homeschooling. We were not we were not ready yet to read this the very first year that we were homeschooling. Elijah, my oldest, was in first grade that year. Lexi was in kindergarten, and Arwen was like doing pre-K stuff, but she was still really little. So anyways, I am excited that we're actually going to officially be reading it now. So besides that, for literature, we have been doing Shakespeare together this year. And this was something that I was so excited for before the year started, and for good reason. It has not disappointed. So we have actually been doing it through Simply Charlotte Mason. This was the year of trying out Simply Charlotte Mason products, and I really, really enjoyed this one. So they do Shakespeare in 3 steps. So all year we are focusing on A Midsummer Night's Dream. We started off with reading like the shortened versions. So they had a shortened version in here. I think the Nesbit version just like took us one little class period to talk about. The next week I decided to go ahead and read one that gave us a little bit more detail. We had Tales from Shakespeare already. Arwen read Midsummer Night's Dream out of here last year, so it was old for her, but everybody else, I thought it would kind of help out to hear this. Also, if you're hearing clacking and rattling in the background, it's the dishes being done because it's chore time right now while I'm recording this video. Life is still happening around me. And then after doing that, we started reading Shakespeare's actual words. If you do this, I highly recommend going on Audible and getting the Archangel recordings of it. That is what we've been listening to, and it is fantastic. I have them follow along with our script, which the script is all included in here. And it's nice because they're seeing like how scripts are set up. First of all, this is like their first time actually. Oh, that's really loud. So this is their first time actually like seeing how a script is actually set up, first of all, which is nice. But then also getting to experience the rich language of Shakespeare. And it's amazing because since they already know what the story is, then they're able to follow along. There's also like an intro before each next scene that like I read to them, just kind of giving a summary of like, this is what's happening in this scene. Because then if they already know what's happening, they're not having to try to figure out like, okay, what exactly is going on? They know what's going on. Then they're able to just kind of like soak in all that rich language and how Shakespeare is describing everything through all of this dialogue. So it's been really, really great. And then at the end of the year, it recommends that you actually go and see a live performance of it. I'm not sure that we're going to be able to do that. We have competition season coming up for sports and things, so we probably won't be able to actually go and see a live show. The closest one to us that I found anyway is like in Minneapolis, so it'd be like a big huge trip if we went, which would be really fun, but probably not for this year. But at least it does give other recorded versions too, like different options that you can look at online, different movie options. So we'll definitely be watching a few of the movies and kind of comparing them and seeing what we think. If you want your kids to read Shakespeare, yes, this one makes it really, really simple. This is probably my favorite thing from Simply Charlotte Mason that we tried. Not probably, it is. It's my favorite thing from Simply Charlotte Mason that we've tried. It's really excellent. I recommend it. Okay, so the other literature thing that's kind of as a family, but not the whole family, we have been doing ladies literature this year, kind of like a little ladies book club. And so for the whole year, we are focusing on Little Women, which I absolutely adore. And I am so excited that we are all reading this together. We have had a lot of fun with it so far. And it's one of the classics that like I hadn't actually read before. Like I had picked it up when I was a kid. I remember like bringing it home from the library and reading some of it, but then it was going to take me a lot longer than what I would actually have with the book. And so it's like I just got frustrated and I didn't actually finish reading the whole thing. Like, so I read some of it, but I hadn't actually read all of it. And I did watch the more recent movie that has like Timothée Chalamet and Florence Pugh in it, and I enjoyed that. So it's nice to actually be able to fully experience the book now and experience it with my girls. So yeah, we've had a lot of fun so far with Little Women. Okay, so 2 things left on our list. I think I mentioned in the last video that for whatever reason, I had tried doing so many different foreign languages with the kids, ones that I did not actually know myself. And I was making it very difficult on myself just because it felt like we should do Spanish because we have a lot of Spanish speaking neighbors, or it felt like we should do Latin because like that's the language of science and academia and the basis for so many other languages. When the simple thing that was just like staring me in the face the whole time is, Audriana, you took 4 years of French. So this year we've been doing French and it is going so well. They have learned so much more than they did with Spanish or Latin so far. And so for that, I've actually been using an ebook mostly. It's just called Teaching Primary French. And I found it on Amazon and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go with it because at least it'll give me kind of like a basic structure, but at least I already know like pronunciation and I know lots of different things that I can teach them. So at least it gives me like the basic structure of how to go about introducing each of the things. And that is exactly what it's done. It has been so very simple. They recommend this book to go with it, so we went ahead and got it, which is Games for Teaching Primary French. So the kids particularly love Jacadi, which is like Simon Says, but French. So that has been a lot of fun, and it has tons of different ideas in there for different games. I haven't even looked at all of them yet. We've played a few of them, but not all of them. I also got this picture dictionary from Rosetta Stone so that they can kind of refer to this whenever they need to. It also has QR codes on different pages so that you can actually go in and hear the words and how they're pronounced as well. And I'm kind of organizing everything that we're learning in French in this little box here for index cards. So I have all of our different cards like sectioned off with tabs. So that has all of like the different phrases and stuff that they've learned, like asking, you know, what the time is and how old are you and different things like that, as well as just like the different words that they've learned, like words for different parts of the body, words for different types of foods. So I have it written in French big across the front. Here, I'll just pull one. So I have it across the front here in French, and then on the back I have it written small en anglais for them whenever they are practicing on their own without me. Then they know at least what it is that they're looking at if they can't remember what the word is. So I try to at least do a little bit of French every single day. I guess I haven't said that for everything, like how I'm structuring it. Maybe I should save that for the end. I'll kind of tell you what we do each day and how we structure it. So we do at least a little bit of French every single day, whether it's introducing something new or just going through all of our cards and kind of practicing, or pairing them up and having them do some different conversation things back and forth. But it's been really good. There have been lots of ideas in that book, so it's been super simple. They're picking up on it pretty well, so we're definitely going to go ahead and stick with French. It was the easiest option right in front of my face, and I just wasn't doing it because that's how I roll. Okay, and then the last thing that we do as a family was something that I also got from Simply Charlotte Mason, and that is their brush drawing course. So most of it I have in the digital format on my computer, but then each of them has their own like little quadral pad here. I don't know if you can see those different boxes, which is how they actually organize it as they are going across the page. And she's, you know, having them do different exercises with like the placement of their brush and things like that. So I just got like some of these nice like thick round brushes, and that's what they use for their lesson. For the watercolors, we use the tube kind that's kind of nice and thick. We put it out on like our little like ceramic kind of palettes. That course has really simplified teaching brush drawing, for me at least. Lots of people recommended like different books and things that you could find online, and some of those were fine, but I really like having the Simply Charlotte Mason course because there's actual like videos. So it's not just a book telling me what to do. You know, there's cards that show exactly what the finished pattern should look like, but then there's a video that is instructing them with exactly what needs to be done. Sometimes it can still be just like a little bit tough, making sure that they follow all the steps, turn their paper when they need to, that they're holding the brush just right. So there's still some tweaking with that, but it's a lot simpler than it would have been if I was just looking at a book and trying to teach them from that. I really like having the videos. It simplifies things for me. So I did say that I would give some little honorable mentions for things that we were using and, might be good, that you might enjoy, but that we cut before the end of the year. So first of all, in Bible, like I said, we cut our Old Testament stuff. We cut the Simply Charlotte Mason epistles that we had been doing. You already also saw what we cut for science, the discovering what God has made and exploring what God has made. They're great. And I feel like even maybe if you want to like spread them out over the course of like a couple years, like there's a suggested schedule in there if you want to do it all in a year. But maybe if you just like kind of ignore that and are like, you know what, I'm just going to spread this out and we're going to take a little bit more time with it. It might work, especially if you want to kind of make sure that you're hopping through lots of different branches of science in just like a couple of years. I think that would be great. You might notice that I did not mention anything about doing artist study, composer study, folk songs, or hymns. We would normally do all those things. And we had started off this year doing all of those things in the Ambleside rotation still. And again, this year just had to be the year of simplification. Like I had to pare back, and you will see why in the next video, why it was okay for those things to get cut. It's not like they're not getting any enrichment whatsoever. They definitely are, but we're not following those rotations at all anymore for Ambleside, which in a way made me super sad, but also if it's not working, then it's okay to let it go. Even if it's something that like you personally love, or, you just feel this certain way about it. It gives you all of these ideas about what homeschool should be and all the things. It's okay to let it go. And that is what I had to do for this year with those. The other thing that we had started off using that I really love the idea of, but it was just the time, we just had to cut it because of time. Focusing specifically and talking about different habits. So we were using Laying Down the Rails through Simply Charlotte Mason, which I really do like. I got the mom version of it for me to read different things. And then we also had the kid version. So for us to have like discussions and doing different activities that went with it. So you can pick like a certain habit and focus on that for like 6 weeks, I think, at a time, because there are like, I think about 12 lessons per habit, somewhere around there. At least there were with the first couple that I chose. There were 12 lessons per habit. So we would do like a couple of lessons a week and spend 6 weeks talking about this specific thing and really focusing in on it. And yeah, it was just one of those things that had to get cut. And it's like, obviously, while parenting, there are certain things that we're focused on, like obedience, and in school we're focused on attention and things like that. So it's not like they don't hear anything about them. It's just we're not having school time dedicated to studying those habits. I really like the idea of it. It's just, it did not pan out for us. Really, really quickly here at the end, kind of how I structure these. Bible is something that we do every day because they have those BSF questions that they have every single day, except for the day that we have our group meeting. They wouldn't have questions on that day. So 4 days of the week, it's questions. One day is kind of like reading and going over like a memory verse. And then the last day is that they choose an activity that kind of sums up the things that they've learned for that week. So they're doing that every single day. For the history stuff, US history is usually 1 or 2 days a week. Same thing with world history, 1 or 2 days a week, depending on the chapters that we're reading that week out of our 2 books. And geography, we have a geography visit once a week. So all of those fit kind of across the board in the same time slot. Next up, nature study, we do once a week. There's 1 day a week that they actually focus in on something out in nature. Our science, it just depends on how long the lesson is and how many pieces I want to be able to break it up into. Or maybe it's a short lesson, but then it has several activities that we can do like 1 a day throughout the week. So it just kind of depends on that particular lesson, and I want to be able to get through the entire lesson, usually not in a day. Most likely it's at least 2 days for the lesson, and I really at least just want to get through one lesson a week. As long as we get through one a week, then I'm happy with it. Our family literature, I kind of just play it by ear depending on the other lessons and things that we have going on. Usually about 3 times a week is what we're doing for reading our family literature, and I usually do a chapter every single time that we're reading. I shouldn't say usually, I do. I read a chapter every single time that we're doing family literature. Shakespeare, I have it split up throughout the year, so 1 week we're listening to an entire scene, and the next week we won't have Shakespeare, and then the following week we're listening to the next scene. So it's like every other week that we're doing our Shakespeare stuff. The ladies literature, so Little Women, we usually do like a couple of chapters per week, so we're listening to it twice a week. French, like I said, we try to do a little bit of French every single day, and brush drawing is once a week, and there have been a few weeks where we've also missed and not done any brush drawing, and that's okay. I'm not going to stress about that is perfectly fine. That is kind of how we split all of that up. It has been so simple. So if you are needing something that is rich and well done, but you can still breathe, this is a very manageable family lesson schedule for me anyways. And I hope that in your life you feel the freedom to be able to constantly be reassessing what it is that you are doing, and if it is not working, to know that at any point you can pivot. If it's not going well for your kids, if it's not going well for you, there is a way to find a good and solid solution without completely breaking your back and your sanity. And obviously, if you're here spending the time watching this video, it means that you care about homeschooling and about your kids, and I hope that you give yourself grace. All right, but that is all that I have for you guys today, and I will catch you next time. Bye.